I never imagined my life would take such an unexpected turn, that I would cross the threshold between life and death, and that what I would witness on the other side would forever change my perception of the world. My name is Jessica, and what I'm about to share with you isn't just a story, it's a revelation. A truth that has been hidden for far too long, and now it must be told. What I experienced was not a simple dream. It wasn't a hallucination, it was real. More real than anything I've ever felt in this world. And what Jesus showed me about Black people left me breathless. That day began like any other. I woke up early, made my coffee as usual, and immersed myself in my daily routine, never thinking that in a matter of hours my life would come to an abrupt halt. I was on my way to work, driving down the usual road, but something in the atmosphere felt different. The sky was covered with thick clouds, and the air seemed charged with an energy I couldn't understand. But I didn't pay much attention to it. My mind was busy with the usual worries, bills, work, responsibilities. And then, it happened. A sharp pain pierced my chest like lightning. It was an unknown, searing, terrifying sensation. I tried to breathe, but no air would come. Everything around me began to fade. My vision blurred, and time seemed to slow down. I heard the sound of tires skidding on the asphalt, the crash of an impact, and then, silence. I opened my eyes and found myself on the ground, staring at the sky, feeling my body grow lighter and lighter. I could hear distant voices, sirens in the distance, but it all seemed irrelevant. I felt no fear, no pain, just an overwhelming peace that surrounded everything. Then, I understood. I was dying. The next thing I remember is floating above my own body. I could see paramedics running towards me, a woman crying nearby. But I felt no connection to the scene. There was no anguish, no desperation, only a complete sense of detachment. I tried to speak, to let them know I was okay, but no sound came from my mouth. It was as if I were trapped between two realities. Then, I felt a force pulling me not physically, but spiritually. I didn't fight it. It was as if something higher was guiding me toward an unknown destination, and then I saw the light. It was unlike any light I had ever seen before, warm and inviting, drawing me closer. As I moved toward it, the world I knew began to fade away. There was no noise, no worrisomely a sense of absolute love. I was about to cross over completely when a voice echoed inside me. It wasn't loud, but it had an indescribable power. "It's not your time yet." The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Before I could react, the surroundings changed. I was no longer on the road, nor in the hospital. I was in a place I couldn't describe, with words, a kind of space between two worlds, and that's when I saw him. Before me stood a radiant figure, glowing with light from his very being. There was no doubt in my heart. I was standing before Jesus. His presence was overwhelming, a perfect balance of power, love, and peace. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. All I could do was feel, and what I felt was greater than any human emotion. As he looked at me, I knew that he knew every detail of my life. There were no secrets, no masks, only absolute truth. In an instant, my entire existence was laid before me, every decision, every mistake, every act of love. There was no judgment in his eyes, only understanding and compassion. When he spoke, his voice was both thunderous and whispering, "You're not here by accident." I wanted to ask him why, what all of this meant, but before I could form a word, he raised his hand. And everything around me shifted. I was no longer in that in-between space. Now, I found myself in a vast scene, images beginning to form before my eyes, and what I saw took my breath away. Before me appeared Africa, majestic, radiant with a golden light that enveloped it entirely. It wasn't the image of poverty and suffering we've so often been shown, but a land of greatness, of advanced civilizations filled with wisdom and spiritual power. I saw its people strong, resilient, connected to the divine in a way the world had tried to erase. Jesus spoke again. "The world has lied about them." His voice resonated within me, making me realize the magnitude of what I was seeing. They are not what they've been made to believe. They were endowed with gifts, knowledge, and a connection to heaven that many have tried to destroy. The images shifted, and I saw ships, chains, bodies being torn from their homes. I saw suffering, pain, entire generations reduced to nothing but shadows of what they once were. But the most shocking thing wasn't the story of slavery and oppression, it was what Jesus revealed to me next. Behind all that suffering, there was something more. I saw spiritual forces working in the shadows, suppressing the truth. It wasn't just a physical attack, Jesus said. It was a spiritual attack, because if they knew who they truly are, the world would change. I felt my heart beat strongly. This wasn't just history. It was a spiritual battle that had been waged for centuries. But then, the vision shifted again. I saw the present. I saw people awakening, remembering their true identity, reclaiming their power. I saw how those who had been stripped of their history were starting to rise up, reclaiming what had been taken from them. Jesus smiled and said, "The time of revelation has begun. They will rise again." Tears filled my eyes. What the world had tried to hide was coming to light. The truth, though buried, had never been destroyed. Jesus raised his hand once more, and I saw a time before slavery, before colonization, before oppression. I saw a people filled with spiritual wisdom, prophets, leaders, men and women with a direct connection to God. They didn't need intermediaries. They could speak to heaven on their own. Jesus looked at me with deep love, but also with sadness. "That's why they were persecuted," he said, "because those who rule the world fear those who carry the truth within them." Everything started to make sense. Oppression wasn't just an act of evil, it was a deliberate attempt to silence a powerful truth. But something inside me knew they could no longer stop it. The truth was awakening. "They must remember," said Jesus. And in that moment, I understood. It wasn't about division or hatred, it was about restoration. The world had been built on lies, but the truth was emerging. I saw a mass awakening people from all nations, but especially those who had been oppressed, recognizing who they truly were. And when they did, the world began to transform. "The change has begun," Jesus said, "and you must tell it." Then everything began to fade, and I found myself back in my body in a hospital with the sound of machines and concerned voices around me. I had returned, but I was no longer the same. I had seen the truth, and I knew my mission was to share it. I couldn't hear what they were saying to me. They thought I was in shock, traumatized by the accident, but the truth was that I was battling something much bigger than me. How could I tell them what I had seen? Who would believe me? I tried to push it out of my mind, tried to convince myself it was just a dream, maybe a hallucination caused by my near-death experience. But I knew it wasn't a dream. I knew what I had experienced was real. The more I stayed silent, the heavier it became. The weight of what I knew and what had been shown to me pressed down in a way that I couldn't ignore. One night, unable to sleep, I found myself looking at the city lights in the distance when I heard the voice again. Soft, but unmistakable. I turned quickly, but there was no one there. Yet deep within my soul, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't stay silent. I had to share with the world what I had learned, but where should I start? I decided to tell my story. I gathered my closest friends and family and spoke to them about what Jesus had shown me, about the spiritual connection of Black people, about their hidden power, about everything I had discovered. But as I began to speak, I saw doubt in their eyes. My sister looked at me gently and said, "You were in an accident. Maybe your mind." I didn't let her finish. "It wasn't a dream. It wasn't my imagination. It was real," I replied firmly. I continued recounting everything. The tunnel, the encounter with Jesus, the revelation about the spiritual power of Black people, the divine connection. I spoke with passion, with conviction, hoping something of my words would reach their hearts. But when I finished, silence filled the room. That's when my best friend, with a forced smile, said, "That's interesting. Maybe it's symbolic. Maybe your mind was just processing everything going on in the world." My heart sank as I realized they didn't believe me. Not completely. I tried to speak to others, church members, acquaintances, even strangers online, but I always received the same reactions. Some dismissed it as a hallucination. Others told me to stay quiet, and some got angry, accusing me of pushing an agenda. It was frustrating and painful. I felt like I had received a message to share, but no one seemed willing to listen. One night, while sitting alone, wondering if I should give up, I heard the voice again. "Keep speaking," it whispered. In that moment, I knew I couldn't give up. The more I spoke, the more resistance I faced. It wasn't just skepticism anymore. Strange things started happening. My phone would suddenly shut off while I was writing about my experience. The videos I recorded would mysteriously disappear. I would receive calls from unknown numbers with heavy breathing on the other end, but no one would say anything. At first, I thought it was paranoia, but one night, something happened that I could no longer ignore. I had just recorded a message about how Black people had been spiritually oppressed for centuries, and I was about to upload it when my computer screen flickered. Then, the video disappeared. I tried to recover it, but it was gone. Not in the recycle bin, not saved anywhere. It had just vanished. A chill ran down my spine. I looked around, suddenly feeling like I wasn't alone. That's when I saw it, a shadow moving across the wall of my living room. I turned quickly, but no one was there. "Keep speaking," the voice whispered again, this time closer, almost urgent. It was then that I understood I was facing something much bigger than I had imagined. This wasn't just about sharing a story, it was a spiritual battle. And the forces that wanted to keep the truth hidden were not happy with what I was doing. I had to make a decision. I could give up, let doubts, fear, and resistance silence me. I could pretend it never happened, go back to my normal life, and never speak of it again. Or I could fight. I could continue sharing the message, no matter the cost, no matter who doubted me or what tried to stop me. I remembered that moment with Jesus, the way he looked at me when he revealed the truth about Black people. He had chosen me to see that for a reason, and if I turned away now, I would be turning my back on him. So I made my decision. I started writing, speaking, sharing my experience with anyone who was willing to listen. I didn't care if people laughed at me. I didn't care if they doubted me. I didn't care if strange things kept happening around me because I knew the truth, and the truth had to be told. So if you're reading this now, it means that despite everything, I kept going. And now I'm asking you for something. Share this message, because this isn't just about me, it's about all of us. The world is waking up. The truth is being revealed, and it's time for everyone, especially Black people, to remember who they really are. This is just the beginning. At first, I felt like I was shouting into the void. No matter how passionately I spoke, how deeply I believed in the message Jesus had shown me, people kept refusing to listen. But then something changed. One day, I shared my testimony online, as I had done many times before. But this time, something was different. I don't know what changed. Maybe it was the way I phrased it. Maybe the growing spiritual unrest in the world. Or maybe, just maybe, it was finally the time for the truth to be heard. Within hours, thousands of people began commenting, sharing, interacting. Some dismissed it, of course, called me crazy, a liar, or worse. But for every skeptic, there were 10 who felt something. Something awakened in them. I don't know why, but your words resonate with me. I've always felt that something was missing in what we were taught. Tell me more, they said. That's when I realized this wasn't about convincing the whole world immediately. It was about planting seeds. Not everyone was going to believe right away, some never will, but those who are ready, those who listen, are receiving this message. What Jesus showed me was no longer just a burden for me. Others were feeling it too. They began to see the same thing, to recognize the truth. And as the message spread, something incredible began to happen. Connections started forming. Academics, historians, spiritual leaders, even people who had never believed in God before began to come together. The pieces I had seen in my vision, they had seen them too. We had all received fragments of the truth, and now we were gathering them. But the more the message expanded, the stronger the resistance grew. It was no longer just people's doubt. Something darker was fighting against us. I began to receive threats, not just from online trolls, but from people who knew things about me they shouldn't have. My emails were hacked, my videos deleted, my posts disappeared without warning. One night, I received an anonymous message. "Stop speaking, this is bigger than you understand." A chill ran down my spine. I had read about spiritual warfare, but now I was living it. The same forces that had enslaved, erased, and manipulated the history of Black people were not human. They were spiritual. And now that the truth was coming out, they were fighting harder than ever to silence us.